Hi, and welcome back. Or as they say in Spain, das vidania. No, wait, that's not right. Buongiorno? No, that doesn't sound right either. Well, regardless of what they say in Spain, thanks for continuing to watch. I hope you're getting as much out of these videos as I put into making them. If you don't know by now, I'm Tommy. Of course, as the comedians say, even if you did know, I'd still be Tommy. But they probably pull off the punchline better than I do. This is the 7th and penultimate video in our 8-part video series, Rise from Fear into Love. This video will explore how we can shift our societies from fear into love and switch from an ego-based to a source-based planetary consciousness. And that's why it's called Understanding Your Power, Creating a Source-Based Society. Dun dun dun. As I mentioned in the previous videos, these videos are meant to be watched sequentially. So if you've stumbled onto this video out of sequence, I encourage you to go back and watch them in the order in which they were intended. 1, then 2, then 3. I could go on, but you seem pretty smart, so I'm sure you'll figure it out. If you have managed to get through the last 6 videos, and if you're watching them sequentially, you have, congratulations! You may not have realized it, but you've just had revealed to you the answers to the eternal questions. Who you are, why you're here, and what's the meaning of all of this. You're done. Huzzah! Okay, we're not done. Not by a long shot. During my awakening process, which continues to this day, by the way, there was a time when I realized that I had answered the eternal questions. And for a moment, I thought I was done. It seemed like I had it all figured out, and so I was finished, and this would be my last incarnation. After all, what was left to understand after you know the secrets of the universe? And then my next thought was, dang, I'm really going to miss ice cream. True story. Clearly, my mind works in mysterious ways. But after a while, I realized that awakening is only the beginning. Then the fun really begins. We'll talk more about the awakening process in a little while. But first, let's look at how we create societies. And to do that, we need to talk about cycles for a while. Since video number 2 on the master plan, we've talked periodically about cycles. The master plan itself is a cycle of coming from high vibrational source energy to low vibrational physical matter and back again. Life moves in cycles. There's a constant ebb and flow, a movement from one thing to another thing and back again. Whether it's the movement of the planets through the heavens, the cycles of the moon, a woman's monthly cycle, or the life cycles of birth to death. Cycles are at the core of life. Fall moves into winter, winter becomes spring, spring becomes summer, and summer becomes fall again. But I'm sure you've noticed that it's not the same fall. It's a fall that's been informed by the summer before it, which has been informed by the spring before that. So if you look at it three-dimensionally, the cycles of life appear not so much as a cycle, and rather more as a spring or a screw. Every time you cycle around, you're affected by the movement of the previous cycle, and the period you're in is informing the period to come later. This cycle is called growth. As an overall concept, it goes like this: attraction, growth, integration. You could also say it like this: contraction, expansion, rest. The sun heats the water from the oceans. The water evaporates, rises, and forms clouds. The winds push them over the land. The clouds hit the mountains and let loose their rain, which flows into lakes and rivers, which flow back to the ocean. This is the natural flow of things, and just as water returns to its source, so too do we return to source. We emerge from the non-physical, journey through the physical, and then return to the non-physical at the end of an incarnation. In and out, back and forth, over and over and over again. Each cycle informed by the previous cycle, growing and changing over time, eventually leading to a reunification with God or Source, only to come out again and do it all over again. The cyclical nature of our incarnations naturally leads to a process that's been called different things by different people. Awakening, remembrance, or reactivation, to name a few. See, awakening, like everything else, is a process, not a destination. There are several stages by my reckoning. The first stage, unawakened, is the state that most people currently live in. It's the state where the physical world is all there is. You're born, you grow older, go to school, get a job, get a house, get a family, not necessarily in that order, grow old, and die. Along the way, you pay your taxes, and maybe take a vacation and eat a churro once in a while. That's about it. You're free to take as much or as little time as you like doing this, and spend as many lifetimes as you wish, experiencing all the pleasure and pain that human life has to offer. In this incarnation, I did it for about the first 42 years of my life, and it was perfectly fine. I mean, the churros were delicious, but it gets a little boring after a while. The next stage is questioning. That's the stage where you've had enough experiences in the physical world that you start to wonder if there's not something more to life than going to work and paying your bills. You might pick up a spiritual book or start going to church. You might say something crazy like, "If there's a God up there, give me some answers." My experience with this state was when I started questioning what the spiritual industry was telling me and whether it was accurate or not. And it started my spiritual journey that directly led into these videos that maybe 3 or 4 people will eventually see. The third stage is one of seeking. You actively start looking for answers, asking the eternal questions, trying to find out if there's really a soul or a God, or why things are the way they are. You might seek out spiritual books or spiritual teachers. You might start opening your intuitive capabilities, and like me, start to receive downloads or revelations through your clairs. If you're watching these videos, this is probably the stage you're at. During the seeking stage, you'll tend to look for answers outside yourself, and you will eventually come to the conclusion that the answers you seek aren't in the physical world, which will eventually drive you inward to discover the ultimate truth of who you really are, which leads to the next stage, awakening. The fourth stage, awakening, is when you have direct experience of your true self. There's an apt saying, never confuse knowledge with understanding. Never confuse understanding with awakening. The awakening experience can happen in any number of ways, some slow like molasses, some fast like a lightning bolt. But the experience will fundamentally change the way you look at the world. You will see the world as divinely perfect, while humanly imperfect. You will see others as divinely perfect, while humanly imperfect. And you will feel love, so much love, and compassion, so much compassion. This is a wonderful stage, but it is also fraught with danger. Many people experience a dark night of the soul, a period of sadness or loneliness. During my awakening, I realized that the world as I knew it was incorrect, and I had 2 options: continue down the path of awakening, or ignore what I've learned, turn around, and join the world again. During this time, I experienced profound sadness and loneliness for a long stretch of time, as I disconnected from the material world and found my sea legs in the spiritual world I now know as home. My life was shifting between deep states of divine love, which I knew to be truer than the truest truth that had ever been true. Love that flowed into me and through me to such a degree that I wept and I couldn't breathe. And crushing loneliness that I had no one to share my joy and knowledge with. I wanted to run around to everyone I knew, to hug them and tell them everything would be okay, and that there is a divine plan at play. But I had to learn to let others have their own egoic experiences, to not try and change anyone, to allow everyone, including my immediate family, to find their own path. But if you follow this path, it will eventually lead to the 5th stage, integration. The 5th stage is integration. During this stage, you take the experience of your true self and re-engage with the world. Or as Jesus said, be in the world, but not of the world. You recognize the egoic nature of the world, and you see others with love and compassion. You don't try to alter the destiny of anyone unless they ask you, because to do so would violate another person's free will and life plan. You know that simply shining your light in the world is enough, that there is more if you want it. You can choose to speak openly about your experiences, or you can keep them to yourself, since one of several things usually happens once you reach this stage. First, you realize the divine perfection of everything, and in realizing that nothing needs to change, you simply retire from the world, go live in an ashram, and sweep the floor and chant all day. The nice thing is that you end up surrounded by other weirdos, so at least you feel kind of normal. Second, you realize the divine perfection of everything, and that you fundamentally see the world differently than everybody you know. So you just shut up about it and go about your day job so that people don't think you're super weird. Your coworkers might comment on how you seem a little happier and less attached to the material trappings of the world, so you end up only being slightly weird and not super weird. Third, you realize the divine perfection of everything and start blabbing about it like an idiot to anyone who's willing to listen. People still think you're super weird, but you're okay with it. I'll give you one guess as to which option I chose. Unfortunately, as with anything in a dualistic universe, awakening isn't just sunshine and roses. The downside to awakening is that you've spent a lifetime accumulating friends who are just like you, and through this awakening process, you become a fundamentally different person than you were. The Gita explains that to an awakened individual, mud, a rock, and gold are the same to them. I can tell you that this is very true. It makes no difference to me whether I live in a small house, a big house, or under a bridge. It makes no difference to me whether I have lots of money, a little money, or no money at all. Each one provides a different experience, and whatever experience I have is something that's drawn to me by me. So there's value in all of it. The dichotomy of my life now is that I care very little about the material world, while caring very deeply about the material world. I'm not really attached to anything anymore. I see everything as illusory and temporary, so I don't really get attached to anything outside myself. The accumulation of possessions means little to me. All I need is provided by virtue of my beingness. Jesus used the parable of the birds, where he stated that the birds don't sow or reap or gather food into barns, and yet the Father provides all they need. As I fundamentally understood that I will always have enough air, food, water, and shelter, I don't worry about any of that. There will occasionally be times when I have more or less access to those things, which is, of course, the nature of the universe, but I will always have enough. If I have to sleep under an overpass for a while, it makes no difference to me. It might to my wife and kids, but to me, it's simply a different experience. And to be honest, I'm not even really attached to my wife and kids, at least not in the traditional sense. That might seem jarring to some, but remember that my love for my family is divine and without condition, and quite unlike the egoic love that most of us are used to. There is nothing my wife needs to say, do, or be in order for me to love her. The same goes for my children. That doesn't mean that I don't set rules and boundaries within my relationship, and try my best to guide my children into adulthood in the best way that I can. Of course I do. But within my love for my family is the freedom for them to be the best version of themselves that they can be, and my desire to support them in doing so. I have no desire to force them to fit into any preconceived notion of who they should be, and I don't need them to be anything in order to make me happy. If my wife decided that she felt that her growth could be better accomplished without me, then she's free to leave with my blessing. Of course, I would be sad, but I would encourage her to do what she feels is best for her own growth, and would always support her in doing so. I want for her what she wants for her, because fundamentally, My love is based on freedom, abundance, flow, acceptance, and compassion. There is no desire within me to control her or to limit her experience. I want to expand her experience and help her create the best version of her that she can be, whether I am actively involved in that process or not. I hold my kids with the same love, and I hold all of humanity with the same love too. While I am a husband, a father, a boss, and a friend, ultimately I am simply a caretaker. People have entrusted me with their beingness, and my goal in all cases is to assist them to bring forth from their beingness the best possible version of themselves, and if they so choose, to help me free them from the trappings of the ego and to understand who they really are. As you can imagine, that makes me fundamentally different from pretty much everyone I know. Of course, I have desires and I have preferences, but I don't need anything I don't already have. I'm grateful for everything I receive, and I utilize the law of attraction to attract to me anything that I desire. But I understand the system. I understand that every prayer is answered. So if I don't get something in this lifetime, I'll get it in my next, or I'll do it between lives, or I'll change my mind. So I'm not really attached to any particular outcome. And I just kind of go where my guidance tells me to. I was guided to create these videos, so I am. Beyond that, I have no idea what will happen. If 1 million people watch them, great. If no one watches them, great. Either one is okay with me. So awakening tends to even out the temperament a little bit. You're still human, you still have emotions, and yes, things like getting stuck in traffic and choosing the slowest lane at the grocery store still annoy me. But I see through the illusion. I see through the egoic mask. So it's a lot harder to take life seriously. You tend to laugh a little bit more, and that can get you into a little bit of trouble when people are trying to tell you why their relationships aren't working. And you laugh because you can see the problem and know that there's no way that they're going to take your advice. And unfortunately, becoming unattached to specific outcomes can lead people to think you're aloof or distant, when really you care deeply about what's going on. But there's no way to express it in a way that other people would understand. And so I want to take a moment to correct something I said in an earlier video. Way back in video number 3, I said that if you knew the human struggle was all just a trick you were playing on yourself, there's no drama, there's no learning, and there's no growth. And with all things, that is a relative statement. In the context in which it was used, believing in the human drama allows you to create out of the ego and do absolutely devastating things that will create balance and release karma, spur your growth, and return you to alignment. Once you've awakened, there is growth. After all, growth is the nature of the universe, but it's different. The investment in the human drama is gone. You see through the mask of everything. So you don't get as invested or attached to anything. You grow, but you stop trying to grow outwardly in the material world. Instead, you turn your focus inward because you realize that this final stage leads back into a new unawakened stage, informed by the awakening you just had, continuing the cycle upwards. Because what you realize when you awaken to your true nature is that life never ends, and thus the process never ends. It always leads to something more, something better. There's always more growth. There's always more to do. There are always more avenues to explore. The Eastern religions tell you that your goal is to get off the hamster wheel, but that's incorrect. Life is a cycle that never ends. Creation is a process that never ends. Growth is a process that never ends. And the most magnificent thing about it is that you're the director of the process. Why would you ever want to get off the hamster wheel when all there is love and joy and bliss and satisfaction and creation and growth? So just as I stumbled accidentally into awakening, I'll eventually stumble accidentally into the next stage and continue the journey upwards and onwards. I'm guessing the next stage might be enlightenment, but who knows? What's that like? I don't know. I'm not there yet. But when I get there, I'll be sure to let you know what my experiences are. This was a key takeaway in my awakening experience. It never ends. You never end. Your creative abilities get bigger and stronger and more powerful as you tune into who you really are, but it just keeps going. This is not about reaching an endpoint. This is not about getting enlightened or being awakened. It is the growth where the joy comes in. The nature of the universe is growth. The nature of life is expansion, becoming, creating, in ever new and exciting ways. It's about flow and abundance and freedom. My life is filled with joy because now, as a conscious individual, the blinders are off. It's less about how can I pay my bills and more about what can I create? What are the boundaries of my creative abilities? What can I bring into manifestation? And how quickly? What happens if I release as many blocks as possible and move into further and further alignment with who I really am? What new avenues open up for expression of my own divine nature? So once you awaken to your true nature, that's when the fun really begins. The evolution of a society is back to source. That's where we're headed. That's where we irrevocably will eventually move. There's no time limit. It happens when enough conscious individuals move us there. This is why everything is perfect the way it is. Just as you can't stop water from returning to its source, and you can't stop the seasons from changing. This is where we're going. We have to. There is no other alternative. We cannot fail at it. It's baked into the system. We go out, we create, we come back in, and we go out again, ever onwards, ever upwards, ever progressing back towards our divine nature. And that happens individually and as a society and as a species. There's really two ways forward. One, we blow ourselves up, destroy the planet, and begin again. Or two, we embrace our true natures and help heal the world. So, if, as Conversations with God points out, a society can be measured by how well it treats the least of its members, then we aren't doing very well at the moment. The problems we face as a society are due to us creating a planetary society that is based in ego. We will need a fundamental shift into a source-based society in order to combat the rising threats to humanity, such as climate change. As Einstein famously pointed out, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. As a species, we've been blind to how our actions affect the world on which we live. Our ideas of separation and superiority have done grave damage to the planet and the people and the animals with whom we share this world. And while legislative actions are necessary, the solution to the problems facing humanity is a spiritual one. We must shift to a source-based society, dominated by the ideas of love, unity, and compassion. As they say, you can't legislate morality. There are too many people on this planet living in ego consciousness to legislate our problems away. When you attack someone on an ego level, they'll dig in their heels and fight back, exacerbating the problem. So, if we want to move forward, we have to understand why we're facing the issues we are and how to solve them. I keep going back to the phrase, hurt people hurt people. People lash out and commit acts of violence, both literal and figurative, because they're hurting. A Course in Miracles tells us that every response is either a loving response or a cry for help. Right now, humanity is crying out for help. People are hurting. People are suffering. People are dying. For countless generations, we've abused, neglected, minimized, diminished, tortured, and killed each other. We've raped and pillaged the planet, filling the oceans with plastic, blowing the top off of mountains, polluting the air and water, and destroying valuable ecosystems. Humanity is damaged. Humanity is hurting. Imagine you have a child who has been raised by abusive parents, This child has been physically abused, emotionally abused, and psychologically tormented. When confronted, the child is angry, screams, yells, and lashes out, partly because they're trying to hurt others as they themselves have been hurt, and partly because they don't have a better response. Do you condemn the child? Do you throw them away? Do you give up? No. You take the child and you put them in a home filled with love. You feed the child, clothe the child, and care for the child. You hold space for the child. Of course, you prevent the child from hurting others as best you can, always doing what you can to see the child as innocent, as someone in need of healing. You comfort the child, you spend time with the child, and you give them space and time to heal. They may not be ready for it at first, but when they realize that they're not in danger, when they realize they will not be attacked anymore, when they realize that they have nothing to fear, their walls will slowly fall, their armor will crumble, and healing will begin. You continue to hold space for the child. You continue to love the child and show them compassion. You listen, you empathize, and allow them to release their pain and trauma in a safe and loving environment. Humanity is damaged. Humanity is hurting. Humanity needs to heal. And healing is never done through the ego. It's never done through attacks and judgment and condemnation. The ego shuts down. Love opens up. Love supports. Love encourages. Love heals. The only way forward for humanity is through love. And if you're in the ego, it's very difficult to see the divinity in someone. It's very hard to see through the hurt and the pain and the trauma and see their divine, true nature. Which means that if you're listening to me talk and you've made it this far in these videos, I can tell you from my own experience that one of the best ways to move forward is to awaken to your true nature. As Deepak Chopra once said, enlightenment is the only solution to violence. I don't think you have to be enlightened, but it certainly helps to be awake. When you're awake, you can see others in their divinity. You can hold space for them. You can love them without condition. Because when you know who you are, you know who everyone is, because everyone is you. And all of us are God. One system, one unit. And that unit is love. It's all love. Once you get it, you get it. On a spiritual level, that awakening fundamentally shifts your vibration higher, and you move through the world differently. That vibrational energy that you're constantly emitting affects those around you, and feeling that energy inspires them to raise their own vibration because, quite frankly, it's a little intoxicating. And what's more, you can consciously direct and expand that energy a lot easier to greater effect. Again, it gets back to being playtime. It gets back to seeing what you can do as a conscious creator. So let's go back and examine creation again for a minute. As Edgar Cayce said, the mind is the builder. We know from the master plan that thoughts are things which exist in the metaphysical realm in a place often referred to as the Akashic Records, and that all thoughts exist simultaneously because time does not exist in non-physical reality. And so to understand creation, we need to understand how our thoughts create our realities. Let's do a simple thought experiment. Close your eyes. Safely, please. Imagine that one by one, all of your physical senses shut down. Your eyes, now closed, don't provide any physical data. And then your sense of smell and taste disappear. Then your hearing, and finally your sense of touch dissolve. You can't even feel any surface that you're in contact with, nor any interactions with anything outside of yourself. What's left? Awareness? Consciousness? And where does that begin? Where does it end? Or is it boundless? Without your physical senses, there is only pure, boundless, conscious awareness. There is only thought. And then we open our eyes, and the universe blinks into existence. Suddenly, we're surrounded by stuff that we can perceive. You're here, and the stuff is over there. And then our sense of touch comes online. And now we can feel the stuff around us. We can feel the floor and know that it feels hard in relationship to our bodies. We can feel the chair, and it feels different than the floor and different from our bodies. Then our other senses come back online, and we can smell the fragrant air and taste whatever happens to get within range of our mouths. But none of this has any absolute reality, as we've discussed previously. It's a reality that's filtered through our physical senses, or in other words, in relationship to or experienced by our physical senses and interpreted by the mind. And it's our thought about it that creates that reality. We pick up a stuffed animal and we say, "This is soft," but we don't say the last part of that sentence, which is, "in relationship to that which I know or experience as hard." If we have no reference point of hard, we can't know soft. In fact, if our only reference point was, let's say, water, we would say that the stuffed animal was hard and water was soft. So the physical senses take in the data, and the mind compares one bit of data to another and makes a value judgment. It is that value judgment that creates our reality. For one person who only understands water, a stuffed animal feels hard. For another person who understands stone, the stuffed animal feels soft. Both people then begin to argue over who's right and who's wrong. Wars are fought, people are killed, and the cycle begins. The mind is not designed to know truth from falsehood. It's a data comparison device. Depending on the previous comparative information it's received, it makes a judgment about the veracity of any new data coming in. So we know that there's no absolute truth in a relative universe, and the mind is not designed to tell truth from falsehood anyway. So what does that mean to you? It means that you get to create your truth. You get to decide what is true and what is false. You get to decide what you give meaning to. You get to choose, and you have full freedom to do so, because love is freedom, and you are love. The question then becomes, off of what are you basing your truth? Are you basing it off of what you're taught in schools, what the scientists are telling you, what your religion is telling you, what your spiritual guru is telling you? Or are you basing your truth on your own experience? What I've done is give you an overview of who you really are, based on my own subjective experience. You do not have to believe me. In fact, I encourage you not to. I encourage you to go on your own journey, your own quest for truth, and ask the question, is Tommy right or wrong based on my experience? When I had my first awakening experience, it fundamentally changed my life. As I've said, I was an atheist for 42 years. Now I talk to my angels and guides, and I receive guidance and signs. I've received information through my intuitive senses of clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance. In meditation, I've had spontaneous body movements called crises, seen through my closed eyelids, and had out-of-body experiences. Once, I even entered an altered state of consciousness and literally gave control over my body over to Source or my guides or whoever it was, and was marched around my kitchen for an hour, changing tempos, directions, and styles, from walking, running, and spinning backwards and forwards, all with my eyes closed and guided solely by spirit, which was, needless to say, one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had, and not exactly an experiment that I highly recommend. This is not something I've tried to develop. These are natural outcomes of me tuning into Source and working to release any blocks to my spiritual advancement. And I don't say these things so you'll be impressed. In fact, I think most people would think these experiences are rather weird, and I clearly agree with that assessment. But I need to be honest, because as long as these things are talked about only behind closed doors, we limit our potential. The truth is that I'm very, very average. I just do my best not to limit my thinking. I understand and trust in the master plan. I turn myself over to the loving energy of the universe and allow guidance to flow through me. And there's no greater evidence of that than me running in circles at full tilt backwards around my couch and kitchen island with my eyes closed and trusting in spirit to keep me from running into my refrigerator. My quest has and always will be a quest for truth. My experience will always supersede any scripture, book, or guru. And simultaneously, I also honor and respect everyone else's experience. While I may occasionally differ with their interpretation of someone's experience, I still honor them. You've heard me offer differing interpretations of scripture in these videos. You do not have to believe me. Go on your own journey. Find out what they mean to you. The truth is, if you look at the master plan, you'll see that the religionists are looking at it from the top down, from God downwards. The scientists are looking at it from the bottom up, from the physical world upwards. The spiritualists are taking the middle approach, incorporating both the spiritual realm and the physical world. They all have validity, and all voices are needed to gain a full understanding. I am not special, but I speak openly about my experiences because we need people to stand up and stand forward as examples of what can be accomplished. As Jesus said, "These things that I have done, even the least among you can do, and greater works still." It starts with letting go of dogma, of what you think you know is true. As the saying goes, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Once you're willing to let go of dogma, as Jesus recommended, turn your attention inward. The kingdom of heaven lies within. Everything you need is within you. Again, it's all part of the plan. God, as absolute love, would not leave God's children with no way home. It's baked into you. Which brings me back to the creative power of our thoughts. All of this reality in which we exist is simply a thought projection. If we've been taught incorrectly that a dolphin is a shark, we're going to create a world where we're deathly afraid of getting eaten by a dolphin. So our physical senses encounter a dolphin. We bring that experience inward and compare it to our previously existing thoughts about dolphins, which is that they're obviously murderous killing machines. That thought is projected outwards, and we flee in terror, preferably in the exact opposite direction from one of the previously mentioned terrifying murder dolphins. It doesn't matter if the thought is accurate or not. Let's take another example, our romantic relationships. Through the law of attraction, you bring to you people who resonate with the vibrational energy that you're projecting, and you enter in a relationship with one of them. Then that person cheats on you and you break up. Then you carry that thought, "Anyone who dates me will eventually cheat on me," into all subsequent relationships. Your experience through your physical senses of that new person is taken inward and compared to that thought, which is then projected outward. You act like someone who suspects your new love to be cheating on you. They deny it. Your experience of that is taken inward. And your mind says, "That's exactly what someone who's cheating on me would say. In fact, that's what my ex used to say." And now, your romantic love, who had no intentions of cheating on you, encounters someone else who finds them desirable. So, your romantic love decides, "They already think I'm cheating on them, so who am I to prove them wrong?" And thus, our thoughts literally create our reality and bring us into vibrational alignment with the world we want to create. Instead, if we turn our attention inward and set our intent to release the blocks preventing our spiritual ascension, our vibration shifts, and our newfound connection to our true loving nature is then projected outwards, bringing our environment into alignment with our vibration, which informs our world, which is then brought inward again, reinforcing our thought, which again is projected outwards. And like that coiled spring, each time we cycle around again, we move a little bit higher in our connection, informed by our previous experience. This really is the process of ascension. In other words, you turn your focus inward, contraction, then that gets projected outwards, expansion, and your environment moves to reflect that, rest. And of course, you remember that expansion, contraction, and rest is the same as attraction, growth, and integration, which is the cycle of the growth of the universe. I'm sure you'll forgive me for repeating. All things are one thing in different manifestation. Slowly but surely, bit by bit, your world becomes more loving as you connect to your own true loving nature that's already inside you. That energy projection of divine loving energy vibrates at a very high frequency and is extraordinarily powerful. It's what makes masters and gurus so intoxicating. The more you connect to it, the more you move into a state of love, compassion, flow, and abundance, and the more you have to share with the world, because you can now see the love, compassion, flow, and abundance in everybody, and the love, compassion, flow, and abundance of the world itself. Consciousness, as we mentioned, is by its nature unbounded. We perceive the world through limited physical senses and limited physical forms. So we believe that consciousness is limited to these same physical senses and physical forms. In reality, God is consciousness and love, and we are made of the same stuff. Our soul, which contains our bodies, is made of conscious, loving energy. So our consciousness exists everywhere, and our focus and intent is what brings it into individuation. If we change our focus, consciousness changes with it, flowing from individuated consciousness to group consciousness and back again. A flock of birds and a school of fish move as one because they've shifted their consciousness from the individual to the group. Once they move out of danger, they shift back into individuated consciousness. The same is true for what we call mob mentality. Any group of people in close proximity to each other, vibrating in similar frequency, will shift into a group or unity consciousness until their vibrations change or their proximity decreases. By the way, this is what Jesus meant when he said, "Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there am I." In truth, what he likely said was something more akin to, "Wherever two or more are gathered in the Christ," meaning the Christ or unity consciousness. Jesus alternately referred to himself as the Son of Man, which means Jesus, the Incarnation, and the Son of God, meaning the Christ or unity consciousness. In an unenlightened world, it's no wonder that the two have been conflated, but the distinction is important. When in a group, the group's consciousness naturally wants to bring members into what has been called entrainment, alignment, harmony, or balance. Love is not chaotic. Love is orderly, harmonic, and balanced. It seeks to bring everything back into equilibrium. So your vibration is going to affect those around you and bring everything into harmony and balance. If you can hold that high vibrational state, three things will happen. First, the vibration of unconditional love will, for lack of a better word, intoxicate the people around you. And if they're open to it, they'll be inspired to go on their own journeys. The second thing that will happen is that you'll help to heal those around you. As Rumi said, the wound is the place where the light enters you. As you walk in your light and they open themselves up to healing, cracks will appear and your light will enter and help them heal. Third, a journey to discover yourself as love will open you to your own awakening. And once you had an awakening experience, it becomes much easier to hold that state because now you've had an experience which validates your thought projection. So just by your own beingness, you raise the vibration of those around you, influencing them to go on their own journeys. There's nothing you need to do. You do not have to fix anyone. You do not have to fix the world. You simply have to turn your focus inward, as Jesus recommended. The teachings of Jesus are so profoundly accurate, yet so misunderstood and misinterpreted as to render them functionally useless. But that's a whole nother point. I said earlier that our whole societies were created out of the ego, and I've also said that the ego isn't intrinsically good or bad. It just is. And the vibration of the planet at the time of the creation of our societies was at such a level that creation of the ego is all we could do. That in and of itself was neither good nor bad. It was simply the natural outcome. Intrinsically, we know who we are, and yet most of us have forgotten. So we created institutions which honor our sacred beingness and then immediately dump them into the ego. We created leadership and government honoring our sacred desire for order and freedom, and then dropped it into the ego and corrupted it. We created marriage honoring our sacred desire for unity, and then dropped it into the ego and corrupted it. We created religion honoring our sacred desire to know ourselves and to feel connected to Source, and then dropped it into the ego and corrupted it. This is not a bad thing. It's simply the natural outcome of an egoic consciousness. But as more people are tuning in and awakening, the vibration of the planet is rising as a natural consequence, causing others to awaken, raising the vibration again, and setting off a chain reaction and a feedback loop which will catapult our whole planet into enlightened consciousness. The danger, of course, is that in an egoic society, the tendency is to now take those high states and drop them right into the ego, corrupting them, and we create a spiritual ego, once again falling into separation and superiority and muddying our guidance. So, as a word of warning, as you open yourself up to love, you have to remember the difference between love and the ego and keep returning to the question, does this feel like love or does it feel like ego to guide you? Love is the answer. This is why we spent so much time understanding the master plan and the relationship between love and the ego. If you understand love, you understand who you are, who God is, what the system is, and what everyone else is, because everything is one thing in different manifestation. Everything is love. If you understand love, then you have a new filter, and you can interpret any action, any spiritual teaching, any holy book through the eyes of love and the ego. You don't need a teacher or a guru or an institution to guide you. You have freedom and autonomy. You can pick up any book, listen to any teacher, follow any prophet, and take the love and discard the ego. Every spiritual master has brought the same message. They've taught the same thing: unity, abundance, compassion, acceptance, equality, diversity, freedom. In other words, they spoke of and gave you back to yourself so that you would know who you really are. And they embodied it so that you would know yourself through their example. As the vibration of the planet rises, we are seeing more discordant energies that want to keep the vibration low. We're witnessing the early effects of that with people who complain about political correctness. The ego wants the status quo. It wants things to stay the same. It also wants to fight and attack and solve its problems externally. So when the vibration of the planet rises, people who want to keep things the way they are feeling discomfort, and they lash out at things like political correctness. Political correctness is simply the natural result of a rising vibration. It's saying, hey, remember that thing you used to be able to say or do. It's not in alignment with our current vibration, and those who are vibrating at a higher level are letting you know that those low vibrational things won't be compatible with where we are and where we're going. So the ego lashes out and complains that people are being overly sensitive or politically correct. And that is, to some degree, true. People who are vibrating at a higher level are more sensitive to higher and lower vibrations and when things are out of alignment. As the energy rises, there will be more conflict and more chaos in the short term as those energies balance out. What will happen is that certain people will dig in their heels and refuse to budge, and it is their free will right to do so. And yet the energy will continue to rise, and they will continue to get more uncomfortable. And at this point, one of two things will happen. First, they'll realize that they're the cause of their own suffering, and people around them who hold them in love and compassion will guide them to a higher vibration. Or they'll die. And when they reemerge into the non-physical, they'll realize how much of their life they spent being angry, and they'll want to correct it so that they can balance and release their karma. In the non-physical, they'll work with their guides to plan another life, where they're confronted with the issues they faced in this one and figure out ways to overcome them. So the system will take care of itself. It is, after all, designed with infinite intelligence. And the only thing you need to do is figure out what you want to do in relationship to what you're experiencing. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to attack them. You can simply love them and remind them of who they really are if they are open to receiving. That doesn't mean you have to allow them to damage you or anyone else. If the best manifestation of who you are is to prevent them from harming others or yourself, then that's a choice that you can make if you feel called to do so. And if you're one of those people who complain about political correctness, you may want to remember that at the end of the day, if the natural consequence of a society is to return to source, you can complain about it and try to keep your vibrational energy as low as possible for as long as possible, but it's probably going to leave you feeling fairly lonely, angry, and miserable. Or you can release your ego and move into alignment with your true nature. It's up to you. It's always up to you. The time of a global savior is over. It's up to us, each and every one of us, to go on our own journeys, to awaken to our own divine nature. The good news is that it won't take all of us. It won't even take half of us. It'll actually take far fewer than you think. Just a few bright, shining souls, all awakened to their true nature. There are already many, many awakened people who are already helping to raise the vibration of the planet. There are many, many spirits in the non-physical who are already helping too. But no one can override your free will. You have to do it. You have to make the choice. You have to be willing to give up the old ways, the old toys, the old blocks, and the old limitations that have held you back. When you decided to come into this physical incarnation, all of humanity's history was open to you. You could have chosen the Stone Age, the Middle Ages, the Axial Age, the Renaissance, the Pre-Industrial Age, the Industrial Age, or even an enlightened age in the future. But you chose this one, right here, right now, what we call the modern age, but more likely will be known by history as the Age of Fear. Why did you choose to incarnate in an age filled with fear, anxiety, and chaos, when we seem more polarized and at odds than ever before? Because this one gives you the optimal opportunities for growth and the healing of past karma. You are here for a reason. You chose to be here in a magnificent era, at the dawn of an age of enlightenment for humanity, to heal the fear, anxiety, and suffering, both of yourself and the world. But to get there, work needs to be done, on you and on humanity. We need to heal, both individually and as a collective. In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. The ego seeks homogeny, more of the same, the status quo. It's safe there, but love will push us to grow and to heal. Look to those who seek to raise the consciousness of the planet. The journey is always, always, always back to source. But without something to push against, we rest, we sit, we stagnate. The world appears chaotic because it's supposed to inspire us to push forward, to move, to grow, to heal, to change, and to become who we really are. When a muscle faces resistance, the muscle fibers tear and then heal, leading to a stronger muscle. As humanity, the world is presenting us with resistance, so the old ways can be torn down, healed, and lead to a more loving, more compassionate, and more aligned humanity in the future. The status quo isn't good enough. Look to those who wish to heal. Look to those who stand firm and make their voices heard, who demand equality, compassion, and inclusion. Listen to those who wish to unite rather than divide. Listen to those whose voices speak with love and passion rather than those who speak with hate and fear. Listen to the young people of today who are demanding an end to gun violence, to sexual assault, and climate denial. Listen to those whose voices speak for all of humanity and not just the privileged few. Listen to those who would ensure that our elected leaders are accountable for their actions and that they represent the people who elected them. Stand with them, or better yet, be one of them. Every movement in history has moved society forward, back towards source. This is why every oppressed people will eventually rise up. This is why every dictator will eventually be overthrown. It's who we are. We were born to rise. Just using America as an example, in the last 100 or so years, we've borne witness or partaken in women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, marriage equality, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, Never Again, trans rights, and more. In my own home country of Canada, we have our own history with slavery and racism that we still need to address, along with some horrific treatment of our own Indigenous people, which we are just now starting to address. And thankfully, we have some strong, powerful advocates who are pushing for us to address these issues as a collective. The tide is turning. Humanity is returning to source. It's just a matter of how long and what it will look like when we get there. How many will die due to wars, famine, and disease? How will the earth change and how many will die due to climate change? How many people must needlessly suffer until we decide enough is enough? As we raise our own vibrations, the vibrations of humanity will rise, and a rising tide lifts all boats. Those who are currently working out past karmic issues of fear, anger, and hate will see that they have never had anything to fear. The loving vibration that surrounds them, like the damaged child born of abusive parents we alluded to earlier, will help to heal their wounds, to let go of their trauma, and to help them rise. During this process, you can either add love to the world or you can add fear to the world. It should be pretty obvious by now that, in my opinion, the greatest thing we can add to the world is love. And we find the source of love by going inside and connecting to the highest self. It's there, I assure you. I've experienced it. When we connect and when we awaken, we know that we have always been worthy, and we have always been welcome to come home. The story of the prodigal son is that of coming home to love without any conditions, no judgment, no condemnation, just love. You can't override another person's free will, but you can place them in a loving environment, free of judgment and condemnation, and allow them to heal by holding space for people who have been so hurt that they have to hurt other people to try and heal themselves. We give them an opportunity to rise. When we give up the dogma of our religions and turn towards love, we stop arguing over whose religion is right. We give up the egoic idea of superiority and salvation in exchange for freedom and compassion. We don't abandon our religions. We allow them to rise. When we give up the dogma of our science, we understand that the existence of a physical universe based in relativity is evidence that a non-physical universe must exist relative to it. When we understand that the exploration of the non-physical universe requires the use of non-physical senses, it opens us to scientifically testing what our non-physical capabilities are. We don't abandon science, we allow it to rise. When we give up the dogma of our spirituality, we stop holding our path to be superior to another's, or our guru superior to another's, or our understanding superior to another's. We seek first our own experience of the divine and trust that above any guru or book. We don't abandon our spirituality. We allow it to rise. This is not about giving up on religion or science or spirituality. This is not about making one thing superior to another thing and following that path to the exclusion of all others. If you want to be a Christian, be a Christian. If you want to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. If you want to be a Buddhist, be a Buddhist. If you want to be an atheist, be an atheist. And if you want to switch partway through your life, you can do that too. This is your life. It's your path. You chose it, and it's yours to define and create. And there is no one true path, any more than there is one right tree, or one right fish, or one right number, or one right book, or one right ideology. And to quote the Dread Pirate Roberts, anyone who says differently is selling something. My suggestion is to understand whether you're creating out of love or fear. Both will work, and we're free to do either. But if we take one path, the next 2,000 years is going to look a lot like the last 2,000 years, but with more nuclear weapons. If we take the other path, the future is bold and bright and beautiful. I said to a friend once that my job is twofold. First, I want to help people detach from the ego, which means I have to tell them they're not as great as they think they are. Second, I'm trying to get them to understand their own divine nature, which means I have to tell them that they're greater than they think they are. You are great. You are powerful. As Marianne Williamson once wrote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people will not feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us. It is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Your soul is powerful enough to create a galaxy. You can send yourself to Jupiter and back. Your soul exists outside of time and space, and it contains all of you, which means that your soul envelops every incarnation of you, past, present, and future, here and on other planets. And every time a person thinks of you, a piece of you gets sent to them. Even after this physical incarnation is dead, your loved ones, by their intent and their love for you, bring a piece of you into their vicinity to aid, comfort, and guide them. In short, you are everywhere, in all places, in all times, all at once. You can walk on water. You can converse with the dead. You can heal the sick. You can calm the seas during a storm. And you can love without condition. Stop arguing for your limitations. You are great and you are powerful. Own it. Own your power. Set your intent. Love, and love without condition. Now is the time to rise. Now is a time for humanity to understand who it really is. Now is the time to shine your light so bright that even those trapped in darkness will be able to see it. My goal is never to have you turn outside of yourself and put your faith in a person or a video or a book. My goal is to have you turn inwards and find your own inner guidance. Your guidance points to love. That's who you are, and it's always trying to bring you home. You are an unlimited creator, created in the image and likeness of God. Jesus told the world, "These things that I have done, even the least among you will do them, and greater works still." Jesus was not greater than us. Buddha was not greater than us. They were us. They showed us that we can do it, that we can rise. The kingdom of heaven lies within. So go within. When you move into that state of love, in alignment with the future that already exists, we draw that future like a magnet to us. And the more of us that are in alignment, the more powerful our magnet will be. So go within, connect, and release the blocks to love. Sit in meditation. Go for a walk in the park. Do some breath work. Do whatever it takes. Find your way. Find your path. Listen to your guidance, and you will be led. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto you. As I've turned inwards, I've healed past trauma. As I've released and turned towards source, I've had many unusual experiences that I've outlined throughout these videos. Synchronicities have increased, abundance has increased, guidance has increased, and most importantly, my fear has disappeared, my anxiety has disappeared, and I face the world with love. I see all people with compassion, the victim and the perpetrator, the rapist and the raped, the murderer and the murdered. All people are holy. All moments are golden. This is the power of knowing your true self. Does that mean that I never get angry? That I never get sad? Of course not. I'm human, and as with all humans, I'm a work in progress. Jesus got so angry that he would kick over the tables of the money changers in the temple. Buddha was devastated when an invading army killed all of his people. Don't for 1 minute put anyone else above you. Don't ever think of anyone else as perfect. We're all both divinely perfect and humanly imperfect. And we must see our own human imperfections with compassion too. Love heals, fear harms. This is the greatest experiment we've ever done as a species, a global shift of our societies from ego-based to source-based. And the transition can be scary, or it can be loving. Old structures, old institutions, and old ideas will fall away, clearing space so that more beautiful structures, institutions, and ideas can rise in their place. This is not about supplanting the patriarchy with a matriarchy. It's about rising into equality, where all voices are heard, where everyone is valued, where all people can contribute. The old ways of fear, control, and inequality are crumbling, leading to balance, order, and abundance. So yes, fight, but fight with love and an open heart. Fight with compassion for those who are in the darkness of the ego. A Course in Miracles says that those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait and wait without anxiety. This is the outcome. As water returns to its source, this will happen. This is the outcome. We all return home only to head out and do it all over again. This is the outcome. This is the great cycle. We cannot lose. We cannot fail. This is the outcome. Know that you are immortal, and that with all of time open to you, you chose this time, this place to incarnate. Know that you chose this time with perfection. Know that you could have incarnated 5 years earlier, or 50 years earlier, or 500 years earlier, but you didn't. So know that you gave yourself enough time to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. Know that the world is turning upside down so that we can see the shadow of humanity and so that we're inspired to share our light. There are so many issues that our world faces right now, and it's only by facing them with love and an open heart that we can change them. So judge not, and neither condemn. Some of the people who are on this planet spew hatred, racism, sexism, or xenophobia because they're working through karmic issues of fear, judgment, and condemnation, and thus they are worthy of compassion. Others who spew hatred, racism, sexism, or xenophobia incarnated with deliberateness to force humanity to confront injustice, inequality, and ego, to help bring about the great shift. They willingly embrace their darkness for the good of humanity, and thus they are worthy of compassion. Fight on, brave soldier. Use love as your weapon. Use peace as your shield. This doesn't mean that you should be a doormat for those that would abuse or damage you. It doesn't mean that you should walk into a lion's den with arms outstretched, professing love. It means that you stand in alignment with who you really are. that you see the divinity in others, just as you see the divinity in yourself. It means you protect and honor yourself as you protect and honor others. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So judge not, and neither condemn. Instead, go within, ask, and ye shall receive. Ask to remove the barriers to your true nature. Ask to be shown true divine love. Ask to be shown the kingdom of heaven. Ask to have truth revealed to you. Surrender your ego and embrace love, and then sit quietly and be patient. Listen for the still, small voice. Honor your intuition. Honor your guidance. Know that you are always guided, protected, and loved, both as individuals and as a species. In the early 20th century, there was a rise of spiritualism. After several decades, spiritualism declined, and the age of technology was upon us. Now that we've fully embraced technology, spirituality is on the rise again, but this time with the benefit of technology. YouTube and mobile devices allow the spreading of the eternal philosophy and the teachings of the great masters, both historical and present day, guiding us to embrace who we really are, just as the earth is in the greatest danger and our ecosystem is on the verge of collapse. Just when our societies seem most divided, most polarized. Did you notice how there are more voices, young voices, speaking loudly and globally to address the greatest issues of our time? Did you think this was an accident? There are no accidents. We are being guided. Jesus incarnated 2,000 years ago because that was the time to set the seeds of our ascension. Each of the greatest masters in history chose their time and place of incarnation, as did you. You are here for a reason. You, like everyone else, are here to grow and heal. To heal the world, we must first heal ourselves. To light the world, we must first shine our own light stronger. And for us to rise, we must put away the trappings of the ego. We must give up old toys. We must give up our egoic ideas of fear, separation, superiority, insufficiency, and control. We must give up the aspects of our religions that preach judgment, condemnation, control, and fear, and allow our religions to rise. We must give up the aspects of our science that preach the superiority of science over religion, and the scientific ignorance that the physical is the only aspect of us, and allow our sciences to rise. We must give up the aspects of our spirituality that puts emphasis on book knowledge over direct experience. We must critically think about whom we listen to spiritually if they show egoic traits of superiority and control, and allow our spirituality to rise. When we embrace our true selves and remove the blocks to our ascension, we move from vibrational alignment to the world's problems into vibrational alignment of the solutions. When we embrace our true selves and remove the blocks to our ascension, we allow information from the non-physical to flow to us through our intuition and allow our societies to rise. Are you seeing the big picture now? Are you starting to see how everything is perfect? How there's a divine plan at play? All the solutions we need, all the answers we seek already exist. They're already manifest in the Akashic records. We simply have to move into alignment with the answers that we seek and bring them forth into physical reality. When we move into alignment with the future we want to bring about, the answers will come to bring about that future. And you have all the tools you need within you to do so by virtue of your beingness. This video series is about hope. It's about understanding. It's about ascension. It's about humanity. It's about love. It's about giving up the toys of our youth and turning our focus towards growing and healing so we can finally come together as a species and bring about a truly enlightened society. So shine on, brave soldier. Shine on, and together we can change the world. Thank you. Thank you. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This really is the culmination of my message. I hope I provided you with enough information that you feel inspired to seek out your own personal experiences of who you really are. There are no tricks, no secrets. There is no one right way to do any of this. Simply turn your focus inward. Ask for guidance, and you will be led. My way is not your way. My path is not your path. Know that whatever way you're led will be exactly right for you. You are on a path back to yourself. Find joy in that, and then send that joy out into the world. I have so much hope for our future. There are so many young voices refusing to be silenced. There are so many people working to dismantle the egoic structures of the world. There are so many people working on personal healing and growth that the old structures and institutions of the world will be forced to adapt or crumble. I feel truly blessed to be alive at a time when great things are happening in our world. But of course, that brings up the obvious question. Exactly what will the world look like once the great shift has occurred? The answer lies in the final video in this series. I hope you'll join me one last time as we explore the future of humanity. If you made it this far, I hope you'll stick around until the end. And if you've resonated with any of the content of this video, please like, share, comment, or subscribe. If I've brought up any questions that you may want answered in future videos, feel free to pose them in the comments below. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next video.